If you're in the WWE locker room and you're not there to be the WWE champion, then seriously, what the hell are you doing? Getting paid to eat catering and hang out with your mates? Actually, that sounds pretty good. But seriously, if you're putting on the boots and spandex, you probably want that main prize so that you can taste the fame, money, and adulation that comes with it. Winning the WWE title can sometimes be a bad thing though, especially if it happens to a superstar before they're truly ready for it. Be careful what you wish for, Mansoor. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 WWE champions who won the title before they were ready. Join us. Number 10, JBL. There's nothing wrong with trying to elevate a mid-carder to the next level. Really, how else are you going to make superstars? But changing perceptions takes time, and it's hard to take someone who, say, has been portrayed as a beer-drinking, babyface tag teamer and transform them overnight into a xenophobic, suit-wearing, Wall Street-savvy heel. Which is, of course, exactly what WWE tried to do with Bradshaw in the spring of 2004. Faced with a heel headliner shortage following the departure of Brock Lesnar and injuries to Kurt Angle and The Big Show, the company needed a fresh challenger for WWE champion Eddie Guerrero, and the former acolyte got the nod. To be fair to JBL, he fully committed himself to the role from the off and did everything he could, whether advisable or not, to draw heat and generate interest in his feud with Latino Heat. Given 6 months to work on the act and gain some credibility with the audience, JBL's title win would have perhaps been more warmly received. However, he beat Eddie in just their second meeting only a couple of months after his turn, and it was an uphill struggle from there. Number 9, Sheamus. WWE initially did the smart thing with Sheamus, bringing him up to the main roster via the ECW brand, which was somewhere he could get valuable TV experience without there being such an intense microscope cast on everything he did. A bigger fish in a smaller pond, the Celtic Warrior looked impressive in squashes and then in a feud with the ever-dependable Shelton Benjamin. After his dispute with the Gold Standard wrapped up, Sheamus was drafted to Raw and continued to look dominant when beating up the likes of Jamie Noble and Jerry Lawler. He was gaining momentum and the signs were encouraging, even more so when he put in an impressive performance as a member of the winning Team Miz at Survivor Series. The next night on Raw, the Irishman won a breakthrough battle royal, becoming #1 contender to John Cena's WWE title, and then immediately putting the champ through a table, setting up a table match at TLC. Somewhat shockingly, he beat the seemingly untouchable Cena at the pay-per-view, winning the title just 166 days after his main roster debut, the third shortest time in history. It was clearly too much too soon, with some citing the influence of workout pal Triple H as a major reason why he was given the strap so quickly, and he lost it just a couple of months later inside the Elimination Chamber. Number 8, Diesel. Kevin Nash checked all of Vince McMahon's boxes for what it takes to be a main event star in WWE. He was tall, he was muscular, and he had a simply tremendous head of hair on his head. Did it really matter that he was relatively inexperienced and had basically been acting as Shawn Michaels' full-time lackey before being booked to beat Bob Backlund for the WWE title in 8 seconds at Madison Square Garden? Not bloody likely. This was the new generation, and the boss wanted a fresh, larger-than-life star on top. Nash, who had been getting over as a babyface and was now emancipated from HBK, fit the mold and was deemed suitably prepared to carry the company going forward. But he wasn't, despite giving it the old college try. The problem was, Big Daddy Cool simply didn't have the requisite experience as a singles performer in a top-tier position. It's one thing to tag with one of the best wrestlers ever or stand at ringside looking tough, but it's another thing altogether to headline a pay-per-view in a long match or cut a money promo. Diesel's reign was long, but to many is viewed as one of the worst in company history due to the poor quality of his matches and the negative slump business experienced with him on top. But honestly, what a head of hair. Number 7, Eddie Guerrero. By February 2004, Eddie Guerrero was a complete professional wrestler. Latino Heat could do it all inside the squared circle and had worked hard to improve his character, promos, and personality, becoming a wildly popular babyface and basically forcing WWE to push him above the level he had been at previously. Popular as he was, though, few foresaw him unseating Brock Lesnar for the WWE title when they clashed in the main event of No Way Out. A huge call made by Vince McMahon in order to primarily appeal to the growing Spanish-speaking audience, Eddie captured the WWE title amid jubilant scenes in San Francisco's Cow Palace. Though Guerrero had the experience and the talent to succeed at the highest level, he found that being the person pulling the wagon could be a burden, and it wasn't long before he started to crack under the pressure. He himself admitted afterwards that he wasn't quite prepared for the intense schedule or the psychological weight that came with being the face of the brand, and he was actually relieved when WWE switched the title to JBL. Number 6, Randy Orton. Tall, good-looking, talented, and with a strong wrestling lineage, was there anything that Randy Orton didn't have when he burst onto the scene in 2002? His early career progression was impressive as he quickly went from plucky rookie to cocky member of Evolution to a star in his own right. While reigning as Intercontinental Champion and after his breakout performance in that brutal hardcore match with Mick Foley, it was clear that it wouldn't be too long before the Legend Killer was in the World Heavyweight title mix. SummerSlam 2004 seemed a little early for his crowning moment, mind you, as Orton became the youngest world champion in history, eclipsing the record set by Brock Lesnar 2 years earlier. The following night on Raw, Orton was kicked out of Evolution, turning babyface and starting a feud with Triple H. Unfortunately, Orton failed to catch on as a good guy because he was, well, you know, young, tall, good-looking, and talented. It's hard being us, isn't it, Randy? Absolutely bombing in the role, WWE decided to take the belt off the immature star at the very next pay-per-view, with his lead babyface role soon going to Batista instead. Number 5, Jinder Mahal. You have to give credit to Jinder, who took being released by WWE on the chin, got to work on the indies, and came back years later as a performer transformed. In his time away, he had worked on his game, most notably completely changing his physique. Look, if there's one surefire way to Vince McMahon's heart, it's becoming a certifiable beefcake, and Mahal clearly knew that his chances of being re-employed and pushed would be increased if he put down the pizza and picked up the dumbbells. His first months back on Raw were rather ordinary, but a week after being transferred to the Blue brand in the Superstar Shakeup, he became #1 contender to Randy Orton's WWE title. Most folks assumed it would lead to a token defense or two for the Viper, a way to add some big pay-per-view wins to his reign while giving Mahal a bit of a rub. What pretty much nobody saw coming was the modern-day Maharaja walking out of their first meeting with the belt around his rock-hard waist. Though he had a chiseled body, a new entourage, and some killer entrance music, Jinder was still a mid-carder in the eyes of many who felt that his title win came from nowhere and happened too soon into his big push. Number 4, Chris Jericho. Tired of smashing his blonde ponytail off WCW's glass ceiling, Chris Jericho decided to bet on himself and try his luck in WWE instead. The first signs were optimistic as he famously interrupted The Rock before engaging in a war of words with the Great One during his epic debut. From there on, however, it was always up and down for Y2J as his position on the card fluctuated, even if his popularity never wavered. Towards the tail end of the invasion in late 2001, Jericho put in a series of performances against the likes of The Rock and Kurt Angle that convinced Vince McMahon to put him over both the Brahma Bull and the Texas Rattlesnake in the same night, en route to becoming the first ever undisputed champion. It was an incredible achievement, and you would be hard-pressed to find anyone who felt that Jericho didn't deserve it. But was he ready? The answer was not at that time, as he struggled to make an impression and found himself behind Austin, Rock, Hunter, Angle, and the NWO in the pecking order. The talent was there, but his wrestling style, coupled with bad booking, resulted in his run being a disappointment. 7 years later, and after cutting his hair, procuring a decent suit, and studying a thesaurus, Jericho looked more than comfortable carrying the big gold belt. Number 3, The Undertaker. When The Undertaker debuted at the 1990 Survivor Series, he made an instant impression. So unique was the gimmick and so strongly was the dead man booked that it was apparent that he was going to be a force for some time to come. I mean, I don't think we expected him to last about 30 bastard years at the highest level, but it was hard to picture WWE without him even during his early days. Still, it was shocking when he cooked the Golden Goose and tombstoned Hulk Hogan en route to winning his first WWE title at the '91 Survivor Series, just a year after his first appearance. A real feather in the Phenom's cap, yes, but neither the Undertaker gimmick nor Mark Calloway the performer were really at the level required to hold it. WWE brass must have sensed that early on, as Taker's reign only lasted 6 days before the title was put back on Hogan, before being held up due to shenanigans. It's telling that it took him another 5.5 years to win his second WWE title, by which point the gimmick and the performer behind it had suitably evolved. Number 2, Big Show. Well, what the hell else are you going to do with a giant that you've just signed to a lucrative 10-year contract? Paul White was no stranger to winning a world title before he was properly ready. Remember that WCW, the absolute mad mental idiots, had him beat Hulk Hogan for the WCW heavyweight title in his first ever match. By the time he showed up in WWE a few years later, he was a better sports entertainer and was a fine addition to WWE's Attitude Era ranks. The world's largest athlete struggled in his early months though, finding it hard to keep up with the Stone Colds and Undertakers of the world, but somehow wound up being booked to win the WWE title in a triple threat with The Rock and Triple H at the '99 Survivor Series, while filling in for an injured Steve Austin. He had very little momentum going into the match, having not even been on the previous month's No Mercy pay-per-view, and was at that point feuding with the funeral-crashing Big Boss Man. It was hardly a shocker when Show dropped the title to the game 50 mediocre days later. Number 1, The Miz. Alright, hands up. Who thought the goofy, mohawked reality TV star from Tough Enough would one day be a multi-time WWE champion? Okay, now put your hands down, you filthy fibbers, because nobody, not even Mike Mizanin himself, would have put money on that ever happening. The Miz is a true tale of perseverance. He battled negative perceptions and locker room naysayers, keeping his head down and working hard until he gained the respect of his peers and the audience. By the time he won the Raw Brand's briefcase at Money in the Bank 2010, it was obvious that, barring injury or scandal, Miz was a main eventer in waiting. A cracking promo, solid between the ropes, finally wearing some proper gear and committed to being a company man, he was an ideal choice for champion. But it still felt a good 6 or 7 months too early when he cashed in on Randy Orton. His act was more polished, but the credibility factor was still lacking, and his reign suffered as a result, his WrestleMania main event opposite John Cena standing out like a true anomaly.